never asked you your name.
Max. My name is Max.
Okay, we're talking about Mad Max here at E3, and I've just recently saw the movie. It's still sort of my adrenaline is pumping.
Yeah,
Played the game as well here. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of the relationship between the video game, the movie, and the universe as a whole?
Absolutely. So George Miller consulted with us in the very beginning of the project, but it's also important for us to do something, do our own thing, whilst respecting the Wasteland and the Wasteland lore. This is an authentic Mad Max product. I like to think of it as all of the movies are windows into one Wasteland, and we try to connect all of that. We try to, since you're going to be inside of the Wasteland in the game, we try and think of, okay, if we extrapolate everything in between all the movies, in between everything and all the material that we know about and that we've read about, so we can get that complete experience.
I think that the Mad Max sort of scenario sort of lends itself to a lot of gameplay mechanics, that sort of scarcity of gasoline and the weapons and collecting things. And can you tell us a little bit about how you sort of translated these themes into a video game?
Sure. One of the central themes is that vehicles are necessary for survival. So it's very apparent for Max when he loses his vehicle in the beginning. He's incredibly vulnerable, and getting a vehicle becomes the top priority. So the central mission arc is, that's how it begins. So the vehicles is one such thing, and then the gasoline. Gasoline is not really scarce in this part of the Wasteland because it is the gas area of the Wasteland. So, but it still has a huge impact, and it shows it's like it's the power base. The super villain Scrotus. He is the boss of all the gas, and all of the camps that you come across are pumping gas basically. And the convoy that you played, it was freighting gas from one of these camps, to distribute in the distribution network. But also, like the concept of water, for example. Water is very important in the Wasteland, and Max has this canteen, so finding water is quite scarce, and you have always this choice between drinking the water from your canteen to fill up your health, or maybe you walk around a little bit injured to keep that water in your canteen, for later use. So that's one mechanic that we think is quite, captures that desperation that you might not even top up your health, because it's all right, I want to keep my water in my canteen when it gets really hairy.
Cool. Another big part of Mad Max DNA is, of course, explosions and sort of large action set pieces. How do you go about creating that in this open world?
Well, that comes very natural for us at Avalanche. We begin with explosions, and then we see oh, is there anything else we need? So it wasn't really a big problem, but of course we did inject more explosions. So the fuel cans that you find quite abundantly, you can either use them to fuel your vehicle, but you could also toss them and sort of shoot them mid-air with your shotgun, and then it makes them explode. So we added an explosion there. And of course, most of the camps, or nearly all of the camps, are fuel-based. So winning the camp, so to speak, even though the actual objective is to reduce the presence of the warlord Scrotus, you have to blow shit up. You blow up the pumps, or you blow up all of the transfer storage tanks. So there's explosions there, and you have a thunder poon. We call it like a harpoon with a thunder cap on it. So that explodes, and the vehicles have their fuel source is often exposed on the back. It could be armored, but you can still see it, and if you shoot it, it explodes. So we missed no opportunity, I don't think, to have explosions.
That's also an important thing to say, that when you're sort of racing around and shooting at the other vehicles, you got a lot of options there, where to aim and how to tackle different things, and it's a little bit like a puzzle sometimes to figure out what's the best way of taking out a particular vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. Our vehicle combat is based around two things, the physicality of it. It's very physics driven. It's a very complex physics simulation of the weight and the speed and the mass of all the vehicles. And the second part is that layered aspect. You can pull off armor, piece by piece to expose something underneath. You know, you could pull off armor to expose the fuel tank, and then you shoot the fuel tank, it makes the vehicle explode. Or you could even pull out the driver, which makes the vehicle stop. Obviously, you can drive back, then steal that vehicle, or you could just leave it. You can shoot the tires with your shotgun, so they have a flat tire. They can try and still drive with a flat tire, but they were going to be really wonky and not effective. And yeah, it's the thinking is that everything is very granular. It goes down into that kind of depth. And one of the interesting choices that you have to make as a player is you want to expend ammo to take down this vehicle. You know, if you have your harpoon, which doesn't use ammo, and you have your sort of physical rams, side ram and the forward ram, which also don't use ammo. So it becomes like, do you want to expend some extra punch to get something done, or do you want to use your sort of non-ammo based weapons? So that's a really good, I think, dynamic.
And of course, ammo is perhaps more scarce than gasoline, for instance.
Absolutely. Gasoline is quite plentiful, whereas ammo is quite scarce. So, but you can do a lot of stuff to increase your the ammo availability. You can help the sort of allies in the world, and they will sort of make ammo for you, stuff like that. So you can make, if that's your preferred style of play, you can definitely get into that and sort of enable yourself to do that. But it takes work. You know, you're just not going to have everything. You can invest in it, but it's not going to be available from the start.
Another big piece of the game is the magnum opus, the car that you're building out, customizing. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of what kind of options players will have with that?
Well, you begin by choosing which actual body you want. So that's quite like one of the really big options. But it's the engine, suspension, exhausts, wheels, and then you have a bunch of visual customizations like decals, ornamentation, and then there's the weapons. You know, a bunch of weapons. You have the harpoon, the side burner, which are two side-mounted flamethrowers, sniper rifle. Let me see. Thunderpoon. So basically the rockets that you shoot, and then you have wheel armor, like with spikes. So grinding weapons basically, which are really good since they're not using ammo. You know, one of my favorites, and it's kind of cool as well. You know, you drive up to the enemy and sparks starts to fly, and that's cool.
So what's the thinking there? Is the thinking that you'll upgrade and get better gear, or is the thinking that you'll be able to customize to your personal play style?
Both, really. Like, it is definitely like, it has that RPG aspect of you acquiring wealth, like scrap and stuff, to afford the next thing. You know, like the bigger engine, the bigger RAM. But once you have it, you play around with it a bit, and then you can sort of decide, well, this big engine, or the engines are usually always good, but this big RAM, for example, it added a lot of weight, and it changed sort of the balance of my vehicle. So you could say you could take it off again and compensate then by adding better suspension. You know, then you have to go out, and get those things. Or you can say, this is worth it. You know, it's awesome because when I actually hit someone, I totally annihilate them. But I like the way that even when something adds some drawback, for example, a bigger RAM adds weight, which makes it heavier to drive, the slower acceleration, but how that sort of motivates you to then continue playing. Like, okay, well, now my it feels slow. I have to have that engine now. I have to get, and the engine starts spinning your tires, but I have to get the wheels, and then it's like it's sitting down. I have to get the upgraded suspension. But then when you really come far into the game, it becomes you take parts off. You really go into customizing. I want a light, speedy, long-range vehicle. I want a real killing brute. So it's in the beginning you just want better stuff, but then it starts to gradually go into from getting better stuff all the time into what's my actual play style. How am I effective, and start actually taking some of those big expensive parts off in the favor of trying some special technique.
So one thing that maybe I don't know, maybe I'm thinking of it as a conflict is this is a wasteland, and you picture it as barren, but in an open world game you want to have it dense with things to do, activities. How do you tackle that, and then did you come up with a good solution to sort of create both feelings of that barren land as well as giving activities for the players all over the place?
I think so. The way of it, it's very packed with stuff. So it's definitely that side of the spectrum. It's a lot of content, but I think that we managed to do two things. One is that you zoom out on the map and you see like the area that you're playing in is actually the sort of the suburbs to Gastown. So it's a natural reason why there's much more stuff, much more activity here. And then you see the big nothing, which is sort of infinite land to all sides of the playable area, which is completely barren. You can even drive to it. You're gonna get in trouble, but you can drive there and you'll see this is very flat and doesn't have anything. To me, it's kind of natural that this is a place because of some oil deposit or something like that. It's extremely busy. So there are like the predominant faction, the Scrotus faction, who own Gastown and who own all the infrastructure, and then there are the opportunists, like the other type of enemies that sort of don't have towns and don't have camps as such, but live in the wasteland and sort of feed on this infrastructure. So to me, yeah, we have all these normal stuff like random events, random content that appears, but we try to keep it in context. So a random content could be content can be just a crashed car, with a dead guy and some loot, or it could be some of the Scrotus faction being sort of nasty to a civilian person. That kind of thing happens all the time, and that's part of the random content.
And Mad Max is coming out September 1st on
Xbox One, PS4, and PC.
Right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
They will try to steal what little you have left. But you still have what it takes. Defeat your enemies and reclaim the life they stole. You will survive. Because you are Max.